Yo, so today I'm going to show you what I've been doing to improve my piano melodies and how you can too. So what I've been doing is trying to switch up my piano presets. So I'm going to use the natural from Keyscape, and then also I've been actually playing it out on the MIDI, and I feel like it makes it less robotic. Like even though you can like click in the notes and like strum it, like just playing it gives it a different feeling and makes it feel more like realistic. So I usually play in D sharp minor, which is all the black keys, and then F and B. So it's really easy to learn. And then I'll play the chords in one pattern, then switch to a different piano, and then do all the other layers of the piano. So I'm going to start off by just trying to record a basic chord progression, and then I'll go in and like manipulate the notes a little bit and edit it after. But I'm going to click here and then click record notes and automation. And I'm going to use a little bit of a faster BPM just for the drums. I feel like faster drums work better on piano beats. So I'm just going to mess around and then find out a thing that works well. So I think that's pretty cool. And since I wasn't recording that, I can declick this and go to tools and then go to dump score log and then click last 2 minutes. And then I can find the progression that I just did, which is the last one. And then I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag it all the way to the start. And then I'm just going to go in and tweak the notes. So they're kind of quantized, but I'm not actually going to do, Shift Q and actually quantize it. I'm not going to do that, just so it keeps that realistic. And when I move notes over, I'm holding Alt so it doesn't stick to the grid. Because if I just dragged it, it would go by the grid. But if you hold Alt, it's like fluid and you can place it wherever you want. So it's still not really quantized. So I hear in this chord that there's a note that's a little bit off or like too high. So I'm just going to go through and select every note by holding Control and dragging. So this D sharp is really high, so I'm going to hold Alt and scroll down just to like kind of put it in the clump because I felt like it was throwing the chord off. So that just sounds a lot more smooth. So now I'm just going to give this a listen and then probably drag some of the notes out so they connect to each other. So I hear in this one that one note is super low. You can see it right here. So it's not really getting the full feeling of the chord. So it's this A sharp here. So I'm going to drag that up. And then I feel like these stabs should be a little bit lower. So I'm just going to select everything and drag it down a little bit. And then there's something in here that I don't like. Maybe it's this A. So that's pretty cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and drag the chords out and then hit C for the slicer tool and then just make all the ends even so I can drag them to the next chord, but not like all the way, but the majority of the way. Except these stabs, because they're stabs, so they really can't go on that long because then they wouldn't be stabs and they would just be normal chords. So for the slicer tool, how I'm getting straight cuts is actually using the slicer tool and then holding shift so it's on the grid, just so I know that everything's even. So that's pretty clean. So I'm going to go ahead and take the bass notes of the chords, except the stabs, because I don't really like the way that sounds when like the stabs have a bass note. And I'm going to go and drag those to like the next chord with a different bass note. And I'm going to lower those a little bit. So in the second half, I want to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to take out this F sharp, and then I'm going to select the chord in the stab and the bass note, and I'm going to hold shift and then click down 5 times. So it'll still be in the same scale, it'll just have a different feeling. Yeah, so that sounds a little bit weird, so I'm going to have to go in and move around some of these notes probably. So it turns out that that F sharp should actually sound good in this. So now that this chord is a lot softer, I'm going to lower the chord after it, just so there's a smoother transition. Yes, that's really clean. So here's the final chord progression that I'm going to use. And I actually lowered the BPM just a little bit because it sounded a little fast. So now I'm going to click on Omnisphere again, and I'm going to click out of the keyscape and go to the A part of this, and then I'm going to lower the, God, I really don't know how to pronounce that, timbre, it's one of those two, but I'm just going to lower it a little bit so it has a different feeling. So that sounds a little bit cooler. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up another instance of Omnisphere, but I'm going to use Keyscape in Omnisphere. It's just easier that way. And I'm going to use like a harder piano, so probably the ballad. So there's not too much reverb on it, so it should sound really clean. And then I'm going to go make a top line with this, but I'm not going to like put it all the way like up there. I'm going to try to stick like down here so it kind of meshes with the chords. So I'm going to play around. I think I like this. I'm going to give it another listen. And I actually did get kind of high here, but it's all right. It sounds better that way, I guess. And then I'm going to go through and adjust the notes holding Alt so it doesn't get quantized. Oh, and also a thing that I've kind of like discovered about the D sharp minor is that this A isn't in the scale, but it sounds good as a grace note. But like if I just play it like as an A, it doesn't sound good, but if you do the A to A sharp, then it sounds good. It's weird. So I've been adding that a lot. And then I'm going to move this C sharp down a little bit just because it sounds kind of weird. And then actually that's an A sharp, so this grace note thing with the A and the A sharp might sound good actually down an octave. And then I'm going to duplicate these two down, and then with the top ones lower the velocity. So it still has that transition to this F6, but it's not really like, surprise, there's a bunch of high notes here. Alright, so I think this part of it is pretty much done. So I'm going to go ahead and play it by itself. Yeah, so that's pretty cool, and with the chords it sounds good too. And in this melody, I left a lot of space open because I want to go add another piano with a lot of reverb that'll take up the spaces in between all the little rolls and grace notes I did. So now I'm gonna go ahead and open up another thing of Keyscape, of course. And if you don't have Keyscape, you can get this plugin called Keyzone Classic. It's free. I used to use that and it's really good. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab the cinematic piano. It's like my go-to for reverby pianos, and also the wash piano is really good, but I like to use that for like deep bass notes. Yeah, so usually this one's a little tougher for me to play, so I'm just gonna keep playing it and then like deleting it until I get it right. So I actually got that on the first try, so I'm gonna go ahead and give this a listen because I'm not too sure about this ending here because there's like a D. And also another thing with like the scales is, so my root note would be D sharp because it's a D sharp minor scale, but I believe the D is called the leading tone, so it like adds a more emotional feel. I don't know. I think I learned that somewhere. I'm not sure though. Don't trust me on that one. Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, this A sounds good as a grace note, but it doesn't really sound good if there's not like the A sharp after it. So now I'm gonna go find a new note for this to play. Yeah, so that G sharp sounds pretty cool, but I want it to be a lower velocity because there's another one right here. All right, so I was just listening to the just the top lines together, and right here, this A sharp doesn't like coincide with the other top line, and it kind of sounds off. So I'm gonna go put it down to the G sharp so it matches. So now here are the two top lines together so far. And I think I might do the thing where you copy notes and then you use the Alt again to just slightly drag them over, and it gives it a cool like springy kind of effect. I don't know how to describe it. So I'm gonna go ahead and listen to that with the chords. Yes, that's pretty cool. So it's missing some low end because I turned the chords down. So I'm gonna, like in the last video, I'm just gonna go into not an automation clip. I'm gonna go into Boo Bass and then mess around. I'm not actually gonna clip these in just because that's easier for me. I'm not too good at like playing the little like spurts or like the little rolls. That made no sense. Yeah, so now I'm gonna listen to this on its own, see how it sounds. And at the end, I added this like half of a chord, but this is like up an octave. and it gives it like a kind of like better transition into the second part, I guess. I don't know. I just like the way it sounded. Yeah, so I'm liking the way this whole melody is sounding, and I think it needs like a little accent piece and then maybe another little counter melody, maybe a guitar or something. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and add a Rhodes. So I'm gonna try a different one because usually I just use the Lush Rhodes, and that's like the only one I use, which is a bad habit. So I'm gonna go ahead and click through these and find a cool one. Yes, this one sounds pretty cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this under the piano just because that makes sense to me. I'm gonna go ahead and do Control A, Control C on the piano pattern, go click over to the Rhodes, and then do Control V. And then I'm gonna go delete the bass notes and maybe some of the stabs. I'm not sure yet. I'm just gonna listen to this with the chords, no bass. Yeah, so I just deleted these B minor stabs here. And then I think I'm gonna randomize this some more or mess with the pan a little bit. Just so it gives it a little bit more depth. And then I'm gonna hold Alt while I have all these selected and just drag it down a little bit. And then lower the volume so it kind of blends with the chords. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna go find an electric guitar and Omnisphere just to finish this off, and then I'll mix it. Alright, so I'm gonna use the bluesy lead. I just clicked on guitars and then went to overdriven lead, and then I found this one. So it sounds pretty cool. But first, of course, I have to check if OBS is working. Oh, it seems like it is. That's a good thing. And I'm just gonna make this real simple just to come in like very few parts of the melody, but just as a little accent. Yeah, so I think those two notes, the an F sharp minor and a G sharp, I think just doing that throughout will add a nice little touch to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and record this. Yeah, so I did a horrible job, absolutely trash job at playing that. So I'm gonna have to go in and edit this real quick. Yeah, I'm gonna lower the velocities of these two. Alright, so that didn't take as long as I thought, but I just like kind of quantized it a little bit, but using Alt, so it's not really quantized. And then I selected it and lowered the velocity. So here's the whole melody unmixed, and then I'm gonna go ahead and mix it and show you how I mix it at the end. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and mix this real quick. Well, actually, I'm gonna go ahead and make a soda stream because I'm kind of thirsty and that sounds yummy. So on the main chord pattern, I have just an EQ that cuts the lows, so there's room for the bass. And then on the Rhodes, I cut the lows and then I kind of faded out the highs because there was some harsh frequencies like right about here, but that made them it's a lot more smooth. And then I turned up the decay quite a bit for a reverb, and then turned up the wet and turned down the dry a little bit too. And then added the default delay preset, and I turned it down a little more than halfway. And then an imager, so it just fills up the entire, what is it called? Stereo spectrum? That sounds fancy. But here's how that sounds after all the effects. So it's like, it's pretty much almost a pad now. but it sounds kind of messy, but it works just sitting in the back, filling up space. And then I didn't do anything for the top lines. I just panned them to opposite sides just slightly, so there's a little bit of separation there. And then for the guitar, I just put a little bit of reverb on it. I turned up the decay and turned up the size knob, and then the wet just a touch, so it makes it sound a little bit more ambient. And then on the bass, I didn't use the cuts like I did on the piano because that takes all the frequencies out. So I just kind of took the middle down and it ended up fading in really nicely. So the bass sounds just like a little bit more deep now. Sounds like this. So it just takes out these frequencies here because the piano takes up from like 100 to like 2K. So now I'm going to go ahead and arrange this and then probably put a texture over it, like a vinyl texture. Alright, so this is what I'm going to do for the arrangement of the loop. I just have the Rhodes cutting out when there's going to be a major change, like in the beat. So when the bass goes out, like the 808 will come in. So I took it out there. And then if the people doing drums want to make this part more simple for like a hook or something, I don't really know what like hooks and verses are. I still got to learn about that. But there's a little bit of a change here, and then it gets simpler in the melody, so maybe like more complex drums here, less complex drums here, and then everything comes out when the 808 would come out, and then it goes back, and then it'll go back into like where there's no drums and just bass. Alright, so I have it recorded, and I'm